Malcolm Reed walked slowly down the hallway of Carrington Tech's headquarters. It was nearly midnight, and the building was quiet, just as he liked it. The glass walls reflected his calm face as he pushed his cleaning cart. The top floor was always the last one he cleaned where the company's most powerful people worked during the day. But at night, it was just him, his mop, and the sound of silence. Malcolm was a janitor. That's what people saw when they looked at him. An older black man in a faded blue uniform, carrying garbage bags and a mop. Some nodded at him politely during the day. Most didn't even notice him. He had gotten used to it. He didn't expect recognition or praise. He just did his job. 5 nights a week, never late, never complaining. But what they didn't know was that Malcolm had once been someone very different. Years ago, Malcolm had been a respected professor at a university in Atlanta. He taught linguistics, languages, communication, and cultural understanding. He was fluent in Mandarin, French, Swahili, and Spanish. Once traveled to teach students in Africa and Asia, but life changed suddenly when his wife became seriously ill. The medical bills kept growing, and he had to make a choice: continue teaching and watch their finances fall apart, or give up everything to take care of her. He gave it all up. When she passed away a few years later, Malcolm tried to return to teaching. But too much time had passed, and no one wanted to hire a former professor who had been out of the field for too long. So he took what he could get. He became a janitor, not because he wanted to, but because it was honest work, because it paid just enough to cover rent and groceries, because it was better than sitting at home feeling useless. That night, as he swept the hallway near the executive boardroom, he noticed something strange. One of the glass doors was left slightly open. Inside, a red phone was blinking. Malcolm had seen it before, but he had never heard it ring until now. It made a sharp, loud sound, urgent, like it was meant only for very serious matters. He looked. Around the floor was empty. No lights were on in the offices. He hesitated. He had no business answering a phone in the executive suite. That was for people in suits, people with titles. It was just a janitor. But the phone kept ringing. And something in his gut told him that this was important, really important. He stepped inside slowly, his footsteps quiet on the carpet. He looked at the phone again. It was labeled INTL emergency in capital letters. His hand hovered over the receiver. Then he picked it up. A man's voice shouted on the other end, fast, angry, in Mandarin. Malcolm's eyes widened for a moment, but he didn't panic. He took a deep breath and replied in perfect Mandarin. The voice paused. There was silence for a few seconds. Then the man spoke again, slower this time. Malcolm listened carefully. The man was from a major tech firm in China, that Carrington. Tech had been working with something had gone wrong with the big cybersecurity deal. The Chinese company believed Carrington Tech had broken an agreement, and they were ready to pull out of a deal worth over $1 billion. The caller assumed Malcolm was an executive. Didn't question why this executive was answering. In the middle of the night, he just wanted answers. Wanted someone to explain why promises had been broken, why the software shipment had failed, why trust had been lost. Malcolm, calm and clear, responded with careful words. He apologized for the confusion. He asked thoughtful questions. He repeated important details. He didn't make excuses, but he also didn't admit guilt. He simply spoke with the kind of quiet respect and understanding that made people feel heard. The caller was no longer shouting. They spoke for nearly 30 minutes. Malcolm didn't rush. He stayed patient, careful, and polite. He listened more than he spoke. He understood both the language and the culture. He knew what words would calm the man, what phrases would earn trust. He made no promises, but he assured the caller that someone from the executive team would contact him within 48 hours to work things out properly. By the end of the call, the man said he would wait. He would not cancel the deal, not yet. He wanted to believe that someone at Carrington Tech still cared. Malcolm hung up slowly. He stood in the empty boardroom, looking at the phone in his hand. His heart was beating fast, but his face was calm. Then he quietly walked out of the room, picked up his mop, continued cleaning as if nothing had happened. He didn't tell anyone. Not the security guard on the first floor. Not the receptionist, who greeted him every evening. not even the other janitor who worked the lower levels. He didn't need applause, didn't need anyone to know. He had done what felt right, but he had no idea how big that one phone call would become. No idea that he had just saved a deal that the entire future of Carrington Tech depended on. No idea that by speaking up, by using a skill he had kept hidden for years, he had saved the company from a disaster that would have made headlines across the world. To Malcolm, it was just a conversation. Just another quiet moment in a job, where no one ever expected him to be anything more than invisible. But that night, he wasn't invisible. He was the right man at the right time, and soon the world would find out. The morning sun shone through the tall windows of Carrington Tech's headquarters. Inside, the building was buzzing with activity. Employees rushed to their desks, talking in low voices about the urgent problems the company faced. The big cybersecurity deal with their Chinese partner was on the line. Everyone was worried. Daniel Carrington, the CEO and founder of the company, sat at his large wooden desk. His face was tense and pale. He had just gotten the news that the Chinese firm was about to cancel the $1.2 billion deal. This deal was not only important for money, but for the company's future. Without it, the stock prices would drop, investors would lose confidence, many employees might lose their jobs. Daniel called an emergency meeting with his top executives. They all tried to figure out what went wrong. The software shipment had been delayed. Yes. But why had the Chinese partner lost trust? No one had a clear answer. Then Daniel remembered the red phone. The NTL emergency line. He asked if anyone had answered it last night. No one filled the room. No one had. The tech team had. Left early for their retreat. Customer service team had finished their shift. The phone had been ringing unanswered. He ordered the security team to check the cameras and phone logs. They studied the footage carefully. Daniel's eyes widened when the security guard reported the truth. The janitor, Malcolm Reed, had answered the phone. A janitor? The man who cleaned the floors? The room went quiet. Daniel couldn't believe it. He asked to meet Malcolm immediately. Malcolm was finishing his cleaning on the third floor when the security officer came looking for him. "Mr. Reed, the CEO wants to see you," the officer said politely. Malcolm was surprised. He wiped his hands on his uniform and followed quietly. In the CEO's office, Daniel waited. He was not angry. Instead, he looked curious. "Malcolm," Daniel said, "I heard you answered an important call last night. Can you tell me what happened?" Malcolm took a deep breath. He was used to being invisible, but now he was in the spotlight. "I heard the phone ringing," Malcolm said simply. The tech team was gone. No one was answering. The caller spoke in Mandarin. "I understood," I answered. The man was upset. He thought we had broken a promise. I spoke calmly. I told him someone would call him soon. I think it helped. Daniel was silent for a moment, thinking. "Can you speak Mandarin?" Daniel asked. "Yes, sir. I used to teach languages," Malcolm said quietly. The executives looked at Malcolm with surprise. The janitor was a former language professor? Daniel asked Malcolm to help translate a message from the Chinese firm. Malcolm read it carefully, then translated it perfectly. His knowledge and calm tone impressed everyone. Daniel realized that Malcolm's skills were a hidden treasure. He saw something in Malcolm that no one else had noticed before. Over the next few days, Malcolm was quietly invited to join meetings with the Chinese partner. He helped explain cultural differences, fixed misunderstandings, and made sure messages were clear because of Malcolm's help. The Chinese firm decided to continue the deal. The news spread slowly through the company, but most people still only saw Malcolm as the janitor. They didn't know he had saved the deal. Malcolm didn't want fame. He was happy to help. He just wanted to do the right thing. Meanwhile, Daniel started to change his view of Malcolm. He saw the man's intelligence, kindness, and loyalty. He realized that talent and wisdom could come from unexpected places. Malcolm's life began to change too. He felt respected for the first time in years. He felt useful. He felt hope. But he kept his humility. He still cleaned the floors at night, still smiled politely when people passed by. Inside, Malcolm knew that sometimes the most important moments come when you least expect them. Sometimes being quiet and ready is all you need. And sometimes one small decision like picking up a ringing phone can change everything. After the emergency call, Malcolm's life slowly began to change in ways he never expected. Yet for many people in the company, he was still the quiet janitor who worked the night shift. Few knew the full story behind how he had helped save a billion-dollar deal. But inside the walls of Carrington Tech's headquarters, things were shifting. One morning, Daniel Carrington sat in his office thinking about Malcolm. He wanted to understand more about the man who had stepped up in such an important moment. Daniel called Malcolm again, this time for a longer conversation. Malcolm was surprised but accepted the invitation. He didn't think he had done anything special. When Malcolm arrived, Daniel offered him a seat and a cup of coffee. The room was filled with sunlight, but Malcolm still felt a little nervous. "Malcolm," Daniel began, "I want to thank you. For what you did, you helped keep this company alive. But I also want to know more about you. How did you learn these languages? Why haven't you used your talents before?" Malcolm looked down, thinking about the years gone by. Then he spoke slowly, sharing his story. "I used to be a professor. I taught languages at a university. Mandarin, French, Spanish, and a few others. I loved my job. I traveled to different countries to teach, but then my wife got very sick. The bills became too much. I had to leave everything to care for her. When she passed, I tried to go back, but no one would hire me. So I took this job. It was honest work, and it kept me going." Daniel listened, quietly, understanding the pain hidden behind Malcolm's calm voice. "I see now that you never lost your skills or your spirit," Daniel said kindly. "You are a man with a gift, and you have helped us all." Malcolm smiled shyly. He didn't expect praise. He just wanted to be useful again. Over the next few days, Daniel arranged for Malcolm to meet some important people in the company. He wanted to give him a chance to use his skills openly. Malcolm was humble and careful. He didn't want to draw too much attention, still preferred to work quietly and help where he could. As Malcolm joined meetings with the Chinese tech firm, he noticed how small misunderstandings could cause big problems. Words that sounded simple in English sometimes meant something different in Mandarin. Some phrases were polite in one culture, but rude in another. Malcolm explained these differences patiently. He helped rewrite emails and prepared clear messages. His work made the Chinese partners feel respected and understood. The Chinese firm was impressed by the care and respect Carrington Tech showed. They agreed to continue the deal, even adding new parts to the contract that pleased both sides. Inside the company, the stock prices rose. Investors smiled. Employees felt relief. The future looked brighter. But through all this, Malcolm stayed the same quiet man. He kept his janitor's uniform, mopped floors at night, and smiled kindly to the security guards. He didn't want fame or riches. He only wanted to be part of something bigger again. One day, a young intern named Lisa noticed Malcolm's quiet dignity. She saw how other employees ignored him, but she saw something special in his eyes: wisdom, patience, and kindness. Lisa decided to talk to him. "Mr. Reed," she said one afternoon, "I heard about how you helped with the Chinese call. That was amazing. Why don't more people know?" Malcolm chuckled softly. "I don't mind being unnoticed. I just want to help." Lisa smiled and said, "You deserve to be noticed." Inspired by Malcolm's story, Lisa wrote a short article. For the company newsletter, she told the story of how a quiet janitor helped save the company from disaster. She described Malcolm's past as a professor, his language skills, and his kindness. The article spread quickly. Employees who had never spoken to Malcolm before began to see him differently. Some stopped to say hello. Some asked for his advice on languages and culture. Malcolm, always patient, welcomed them. Daniel noticed the change too. He realized that Malcolm's story was not just about saving a business deal, it was about respect, dignity, and the power of hidden talents. Daniel wanted to do more. He asked Malcolm if he would consider a new role in the company. Helping with international communication and cultural understanding, Malcolm was surprised and touched, thought for a moment, then nodded. He knew that this was a chance to rebuild his life, not just as a janitor, but as a valued member of the team. From that day on, Malcolm's nights were no longer spent alone with a mop. Instead, he worked with teams preparing for meetings, translating messages, and helping people understand each other better. Malcolm felt alive again. He remembered the night he answered the emergency call. A simple moment, a small decision. That night had changed everything. But Malcolm never forgot where he came from. He remained humble and kind, always ready to help anyone in need. The company, once at the edge of disaster, now had hope and strength because of a man who believed in quiet courage and the power of listening. Malcolm's story became a reminder to everyone at Carrington Tech. Sometimes the greatest heroes are not the loudest or the richest. Sometimes they are the quiet souls working in the background, ready to answer when the world needs them most. After accepting the new role at Carrington Tech, Malcolm's life began to change in ways he never imagined. He was no longer just the janitor who worked quietly through the night. Now, he was part of the company's international team, helping to build bridges with partners across the world. But Malcolm never forgot his roots. He still took pride in his work ethic, humility, and the simple lessons life had taught him. Even as he sat in meetings with high-ranking executives and foreign partners, he remembered what it felt like to be invisible. One morning, Daniel called Malcolm into his office again. "Malcolm," Daniel said warmly, "I want to thank you for everything you have done these past weeks. Your knowledge and calm presence have made a huge difference. A Chinese firm has signed the final contract, and the deal is complete. Our company's future is secure." Malcolm smiled quietly. He was happy to have helped, but he did not want the attention. "I'm just glad I could do my part," he said softly. Daniel nodded. "You have done more than that. You have saved this company from what could have been disaster, and I want to make sure you are recognized for that." Daniel surprised Malcolm by inviting him to the company's annual shareholders gala. This event was usually for the highest executives and investors only. But this year, Daniel wanted Malcolm to be there as a guest of honor. When the night of the gala arrived, Malcolm dressed in his best clothes, a simple suit that had been donated by a friend. He arrived quietly, not sure what to expect. Inside the grand ballroom, the room was filled with sparkling lights and elegant people. Malcolm felt out of place at first. But when Daniel took the stage to speak, Malcolm's heart began to race. Daniel told the story of the company's struggle to save the billion-dollar deal. He spoke about the calls that came late at night, the tension, and the fear that the company might fail. Then, Daniel shared the surprising hero of the story, a man few had noticed, a janitor named Malcolm Reed. The room went silent. Then, as Daniel called Malcolm to stand, the crowd began to applaud. The applause grew louder and louder. Malcolm's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in years, he felt truly seen and appreciated. After the applause, Daniel shook Malcolm's hand and said, "This company is lucky to have you." Malcolm felt overwhelmed but proud. He realized that respect and recognition could change a person's life. The gala marked a new beginning. Malcolm's story inspired many employees to look beyond titles and uniforms, to see the true value in each person at work. Malcolm continued his new role. He helped train teams on cultural communication, prepared translations, and advised on international partnerships. His presence brought calm and trust to difficult negotiations. But Malcolm's heart was still with his community. He began to use his new position to mentor young people interested in languages and culture. He visited local schools, sharing his story of hardship and hope. He told students that life might be hard sometimes, but with patience, courage, and kindness, anyone could overcome their challenges. Malcolm also started a small language club at the community center, where people of all ages could come and learn different languages for free. The club became popular, and Malcolm found joy in teaching again, though he had stepped into a new world of boardrooms and business deals. Malcolm never lost his humility or kindness. He remained the same gentle man who had answered the phone on that quiet night. Daniel often watched Malcolm with respect. He saw how much the man had grown, yet how grounded he remained. Daniel understood that real leadership sometimes came from unexpected places. Meanwhile, the company thrived. The billion-dollar deal had opened new doors for growth, innovation, and partnerships. Malcolm's quiet work behind the scenes continued to strengthen the bonds between Carrington Tech and its global partners. One afternoon, Daniel approached Malcolm with an idea. "Malcolm," he said, "I want to create a special role for you, head of international cultural relations. You will lead efforts to build trust and understanding with all our partners worldwide." Malcolm smiled, touched by the trust Daniel showed. "I would be honored," he said. With this new role, Malcolm had the chance to bring his knowledge and heart to a larger stage. He traveled to conferences, met with leaders from different countries, and helped Carrington Tech become a truly global company. Despite the new challenges and busy schedule, Malcolm stayed true to his values. He remembered the days when he felt invisible, and he worked hard to make sure no one at the company ever felt that way. His story became an example of hope, courage, and the power of one person's voice. Malcolm had once thought his life was over after losing his wife and his career. But by choosing to listen, speak up, and be kind, he had changed not only his own life, but the lives of many others. The janitor who had quietly answered a phone call in the middle of the night had become a leader, mentor, and a symbol of true strength, and through it all, Malcolm remained humble, grateful, ready to help whenever he was needed. Would you like me to continue with part 5? Malcolm's life had changed in ways he never expected. From being a quiet janitor working the night shift, he had become a respected leader at Carrington Tech. But no matter how much his world changed, Malcolm stayed humble and true to himself. He never forgot where he came from or the struggles that shaped him. Even after his new role as head of international cultural relations, Malcolm still took time for the simple things. He enjoyed walking to work, greeting people with a warm smile, and listening carefully when others spoke. For him, respect was more important than status or money. One morning, Malcolm arrived at the company early as usual. But today was different. The company's CEO, Daniel Carrington, had called for a special meeting. Malcolm felt a mix of curiosity and nervousness as he entered the large conference room filled with top executives, investors, and employees. Daniel stood at the front and began speaking. "Today we celebrate not only our success, but the people who made it possible. I want to honor Malcolm Reed, the man who saved our company and showed us the true meaning of courage, wisdom, and kindness." The room erupted in applause. Malcolm felt his heart swell with emotion. He looked around and saw faces filled with admiration and respect. Daniel continued, "Malcolm's story reminds us that every person has value. It is not our titles or uniforms that define us, but our actions and the way we treat others." Malcolm's quiet strength helped us through a difficult time. Today, we are proud to recognize him not just as a leader, but as a hero. Malcolm stood to accept the applause, feeling grateful but also humbled. He knew he had not done this for fame or praise. He had done it because it was right. After the meeting, many people came up to Malcolm to shake his hand, share kind words, or simply say, "Thank you." For the first time in his life, Malcolm felt truly seen. But Malcolm also thought about the journey that had brought him here. He remembered the long nights of loneliness, the pain of losing his wife, and the quiet hope that kept him going. He realized that life was full of unexpected chances. One small decision, answering a phone call, had changed everything in the weeks that followed. Malcolm used his new influence to help others. He worked with the company's human resources to create programs that supported employees from diverse backgrounds. He encouraged leaders to listen more and judge less. He also expanded his language club at the community center, where more and more people came to learn and share. Malcolm found joy in helping others discover their own talents. One afternoon, a young woman named Maria came to the club. She was shy and uncertain, but eager to learn. Malcolm welcomed her warmly and shared stories about his life, how patience, courage, and kindness had helped him overcome hard times. Maria listened carefully. She felt inspired and hopeful. She knew that, like Malcolm, she could find strength. In her own voice, Malcolm's story spread beyond the company and the community. Local news stations featured interviews with him, sharing how a man who started as a janitor saved $1 billion deal and became a respected leader. But Malcolm never let the attention change him. He remained the same gentle soul who believed in the power of listening, learning, and helping others. One evening, after a long day of meetings and teaching, Malcolm sat quietly on a bench outside the company building. The city lights twinkled around him, and the cool night air felt calm. He thought about the journey he had taken, from loss and hardship to hope and success. Malcolm smiled to himself. He knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but he was ready because he understood something important. True strength does not come from power or fame. It comes from kindness, courage, the willingness to answer the call when it matters most. And Malcolm Reed was ready. If you want, I can help with any other parts or topics next.